Hey guys, my name is Mike. I'm going to show you how to build an Exo Box. First things first, let's get our tools in order. So we're going to start with a rubber mallet. This is a 32-ounce mallet. The heavier the better with some of this stuff. And then you're going to need a drill with a Phillips head bit, and a drill or an impact driver will work just fine. So let's get started on assembling this box now that we have all of our tools put together. We're going to start with a 30-inch panel. This is the hatch panel, and you can tell the difference between the other 30-inch panel because it's got this big hole in it. So you're going to start by flipping that upside down. You can tell that it's upside down or right side up by these little features here. That is going to be, if those are pointing up, this piece is now facing upside down. So you're going to start with that. You're going to start with your 30-inch struts. These are the longest plastic struts that are in the assembly kit. And then in addition to that, you're going to get the 24-inch strut. The 24-inch strut is a unique strut. You can tell from this little clearance here for the handle on the Exo Box. So you're going to grab 2 of the 30-inch and you're going to grab 2 of the 24-inch. Set those aside. You're also going to grab 4 of these 3-way elbows. These are pretty self-explanatory. Little 3-pronged piece there. And then you're also going to grab your hardware kit. In that hardware kit, there are 2 main different types of screws. There's your wood screw, and then there's your machine screw. So you're going to start by taking one of your 24-inch panel or 24-inch struts with the clearance, and you're going to take one of the 3-way elbows and you're just going to fit it together just like that. Just going to fit in just like that. And then you're going to take one of your machine screws and just finger tighten and thread that into place. You don't have to make it too tight. You want it to be kind of loose. Then you're going to grab another 3-way elbow and you're going to do that on the same thing on the other side. These 3-way elbows too, each side is the same as the other. So there's not like one side has to be inserted to anything here. So you're just going to do that same thing we did over there, right over here. Grab another machine screw, pop that in. Finger tight. Keeping a lot of these fasteners finger tight will allow the box to fit better into its final position and give some parts some flexibility around each other. Then you're going to take this new strut assembly here, and you're going to insert it onto your short side of your hatch panel. And the most important part here is you're going to make sure that this clearance here for the handle is pointing up. So you'll notice on the bottom of these struts here, there's a little shelf. This little shelf right here runs all the way down and along there. This little shelf is what's going to make contact with the front side of this board. So you're going to start by just kind of positioning it in place there. You'll also note around all of the boards, pilot holes are drilled, 3 on each side, and you can use those holes to sort of line up where the strut will eventually live on there. This should go on relatively easily. I just use my hands to push it on there. And you just want to make sure it has a nice, consistent fit. And then you can check the pilot holes to make sure that you're lined up on the strut to the wood panel. Once you feel like that's lined up, and you can use your mallet to tap it in either direction to line it up. Once that's there, then you're going to take one of your 30-inch pieces and you're going to fit that on the side. And you're going to kind of brace this strut back here, and you're just going to slide it into place. And again, this is just, we're all kind of staging these pieces. So that just gets set right there. Don't worry about the end falling off like that. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. You just get this piece started just like that. So now that you've got these 2 30-inch strut pieces installed and located on the panel, then you're going to take 2 more machine screws, and let's just finger tighten those onto the 3-way elbow as well, just to make sure these parts don't go anywhere. Same thing on this side. Okay, then you're going to actually set this aside, and you're going to essentially replicate this first strut piece that we just built. So you're going to take your second 24-inch strut with the clearance. You're going to grab 2 of the 3-way elbows. And you're just going to install them each like that with a machine screw on either end, finger tight, just to lock its position. Then this part is relatively straightforward. The only tricky part is sometimes it's a little difficult to just get all these pieces to line up 100% together, but you'll find your groove. You can start by just getting each three-way elbow started in the 30-inch strut, and then just using your palm and sort of grabbing the panel, just sort of slowly work it on. It doesn't have to all go on one shot. You almost want to kind of just evenly press it on, and you'll notice that it'll just slide into its slot on the panel there. And you can go around and kind of push it together there. And before you know it, all the pieces are on the panel, located on their pilot holes, as you can see here. But again, none of these pieces are actually fastened to the panel. So now that we have all these pieces staged on here and relatively in the correct position, now we're gonna go around with our wood screws and our drill, and we're gonna start actually tacking this thing down. So just grab, I start in the middle here. I think it's best to start in the middle pieces. So I'm starting on this 24-inch strut right in the middle. And the trick with these is to kind of use your hand to influence each one of these struts as into the wood as you can. This will ultimately give you a better, cleaner looking product at the end. So you're gonna just kind of, I'm using my hand to just kind of press there, and then I just, boom. And again, these screws don't have to be super Hulk tight on there, just get them nice and snug. Grab this next one. Just, again, I'm using my hand to just influence the strut. I'm just pushing it into place, and bam, just like that. You can let the drill click a few times. If you have a drill that can do torque setting, I would recommend doing somewhere around 9 inch-pounds, maybe 10. Anything more than that is not necessary. So we're gonna rotate our panel, and we're just gonna work around each one of these sides and make sure all of our screws are nice and snug into their locations. So again, I'm taking my hand. What you can do too, if you can't really reach around it, you can put your hand underneath as well, kind of like this, and just sort of grab it and push it, whichever way works for you. Then you take your drill, just get that installed there, and you just work your way all the way around. I just noticed here that I forgot 2 of the machine screws, so definitely good to be checking constantly and make sure all your fasteners are in place, but these 2 up here on the final strut that I installed, so we'll go ahead and put those on finger tight. And real quick before I go any further, let's just turn this thing over and take a look here. If you take a look at the, what you're really trying to make sure is you're trying to make sure that you don't have too big of a gap along the strut to panel relationship. So that's what me using my hand to sort of influence the strut into the panel is doing, is making sure that I've got a nice, consistent, nice, clean seam there. So it's never a bad idea while you're in the middle of doing this to maybe turn it over and make sure that none of these are looking too out of whack. We'll rotate it again, get some more wood screws. And that's the first step of building your Exo Box, is assembling this hatch panel assembly. So now you've got this piece, so you can actually just go ahead and set this aside now. Okay, so on to the next step here. You're actually going to pretty much do the exact same thing that you just did on the last part all over again. This time you're gonna grab your 30-inch panel that does not have the hatch in it. So this is the same size panel as before, but this time it's just a solid piece. Go ahead and set it down on your workstation, upside down with these features here, like I've pointed out in the last one, pointing up. So another rule of thumb would be set it down so that you can see your pilot holes. If you can see your pilot holes, you're facing it correctly. And you're gonna go ahead and do the exact same thing. So you're gonna start with a 24-inch strut. You can find these with the clearance there. And just put this together, finger tight with your 3-way elbows. And you're gonna get this panel in the right orientation. And again, most important part of installing these pieces on this panel and the previous one specifically is that this handle clearance is facing up, essentially not touching the wood on this part. I'll show you right here what it looks like if you were to do this incorrectly. If you were to do this incorrectly, this is what it would look like. If you see here, this handle clearance is now not taking advantage of the way that this strut is actually supposed to fasten to the board. So if you see it like that, it's not right. So go ahead and pull that off. And let's go ahead and put it on the correct way. Again, you're just starting on one side, and I'm just essentially using my hand to just sort of fit. There's a slot inside of this right here. This slot right here is where the wood actually interfaces with the strut. So you're just really sliding that into place. So you start on one side, use the pilot holes as a reference for whether or not you're lined up. See right now, I'm not lined up on this. These holes aren't lined up there. See, you can see on this strut here, you can't see any of the pilot holes that are supposed to be visible there. So what I would do is I'd figure out which direction this piece needs to go. I think it needs to go to my left. Then I'm gonna use the mallet or even just my palm. You can even use your palm sometimes to just sort of tap it into place. Get that lined up. Use the mallet, went a little too far. There it is. And you can always use the mallet too to kind of tap this down as far as it needs to go. Usually you don't really need to do that as much, but it's always an option. So now that this is located in its home, you're gonna grab those 30-inch struts again, the long ones, and you're just gonna get those fitted in their place as well and push down onto that three-way elbow. And do that for both sides. Just like that. Then you're gonna take 2 more machine screws, get those finger tight on the three-way elbow. Then again, set this aside, build up 1 more of these. Two machine screws, bang, finger tight. You'll go in at the end here and make sure, and you'll go use the drill to actually tighten all of these screws. But again, like I said, these boxes go together with a little bit more flexibility, and you don't have everything super tight. So now you've got the strut here and you've got that clearance part facing up. So go ahead and get your panel into position here. So again, I'm just finding the slots in those 30-inch struts here, getting it started, and then I'm just kind of using my hand to get it pushed down into its spot. You kind of work it around, make sure that your parts are all lining up. Okay. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect circle to circle on the pilot holes, but it is just a nice guide and a nice reference. So again, let's not forget about those 2 machine screws now that we've got that in there. Okay, so now this piece is now ready to have all of its wood screws installed. So let's go ahead and start the middle here. And again, I'm just using my hand to just sort of press and make sure that that strut is as far into the board as it possibly can be. All right, we're just wrapping this 30-inch panel up here. We've got our final screw. Looks like everything is fitting together nicely. You can also always take a look at if you trace with your eye this line here of the strut, there's another line on the board right next to it, on the panel right next to it, and it's usually pretty obvious to spot if on that line there's any sort of, if these two pieces aren't parallel, essentially is what you're looking for. You want to make sure that there's not any imbalance and the piece isn't sitting on there in any sort of weird, non-linear way. So again, we'll just turn this over and we'll look at all of these gaps here. This all looks really good. There's not any big voids. Everything fits together nicely. So now that we're done with that, we'll go ahead and set this aside. Actually, we're gonna leave that right there. We're gonna leave that right there and we're gonna get started actually zipping this box up. Now that you have your bottom done, you're gonna go ahead and start with the 24-inch panel, which is this piece here. This is like the second largest piece, I would say, in the kit, and it's the long, rectangular, skinnier piece. Same method as the last one as far as understanding which side is which. This piece has a little cutout here, and that's gonna be on the inside of the box. So the piece that has nothing and is nice and pretty, that's the outside of the box. So the first step with this is to grab this panel, and with the outside facing me, I'm going to just drop this into place on the top of this strut here. This is where your mallet is gonna come into play. So you're gonna go ahead and tap this down in the same methodology as before, where you're observing those pilot holes on this panel and making sure that they're lining up with the holes on this strut. That looks pretty good down there already. Looks pretty lined up. Now that that piece is sitting there, you're gonna also collect your 20-inch struts. These are the shortest strut. These struts do not have any sort of clearance for any handles. They are the same on both sides. So these are any directional, top, bottom, down, they're all the same. So nothing to worry about there. Go ahead and take your 20-inch strut and you're gonna slide it onto this short side of this long panel here, and then you're just gonna drop it down onto that three-way elbow. This is another tool for the mallet. You can kind of just tap it into place there, and you'll see the whole thing just sort of fits together just like that. Now that that's on there, and again, you can see that we're lined up with our pilot holes, let's go ahead and take another machine screw and just finger tight this one. And then you're also gonna take another one of your 20-inch panels here, and you're gonna go to the other side, and you're gonna do the exact same thing. Just go ahead and drop that on there, slide that onto your three-way elbow. Grab your mallet. Sometimes you need to just give the three-way elbow a little push up this way, just so it lines up nice. And just like that. I give this little tap sometimes too, just to make sure, you wanna make sure this back here, you'll notice just like those gaps on the other place, on the first panel, you're trying to mitigate those gaps on all areas. So just like that first panel, there's gonna be a potential for a gap there. So you wanna make sure everything is nice and snug and tight and located up to its home. Okay? Now we're gonna actually go and start fastening this piece. So go ahead and take your wood screws, and just like before on the other panel, you always wanna make sure that these struts are being influenced towards the panel as much as possible. So I'll take my hand and sort of grab it kind of like this. Stuff gets a little, this panel is really easy to give that influence because you can really just push down on the top, and that's gonna do all that you need as far as making sure that it stays down and doesn't get too much of a gap. So I'm just pushing down on this panel up here, just like that. Last one on the bottom here. Then you're gonna grab your 3 screws for the last side. Feels pretty snug there. Looks like we're missing a machine screw there, so I'll go ahead and grab a machine screw and just get that in there finger tight. Sometimes you can start these screws too, but with your hands. You know, you can get it in that hole and turn it just like a half turn or a full turn, and it'll grip on that wood, and then it'll sit there, and then you can just go with your drill. It's a little bit easier than having to kind of hold it there with your hands. So I've got these 3 screws here. They're all staged and ready to go. Now I can just push on this strut with my hand and use the drill and just get these things nice and put in their homes. Just like that. Now you're gonna grab one of your 20-inch panels with your handles. And again, these little cutouts here, that means that this is on the inside of the box. But now, things are a little bit different because now you've got this strut here, and this thing is gonna have to slide into that strut before it eventually gets to its home. So, again, I'm not putting it in up here all the way and sliding it down. That's not really necessary. You can get it down there, but you do wanna start it a little bit higher just so it slides into this other 3-way elbow nice and neatly. And then you're gonna take your mallet and just, with even pressure, just tap that into place. Give it a little tap this way too to make sure it really locks into that 3-way elbow. And that looks pretty nice. If you look over here, our pilot holes are all lined up. They're lined up on this side and they're lined up on that bottom. Let's go ahead and take another one of our 20-inch struts here. We're gonna fit it on the side. And we're gonna just, same as before, kind of push that 3-way elbow up. Give that a little tap. Now you've got this piece with the 2 20-inch struts on either side of it. Let's grab a machine screw and just finger tighten that. Don't worry about this thing looking a little wobbly out here. We're gonna lock it into its place right now. So if you look around on your panel, you should, on your 20-inch panel, you should see the holes, the pilot holes again lined up. Let's go ahead and start on this side here. So I'm gonna take my hand is sort of, I'm grabbing this strut right now, and I'm also grabbing the panel, and I'm kind of just making sure that they're as tight and as snug as they can be. And then I'm gonna take this screw, and I'm gonna use my fingers to just twist it, maybe like a half turn, and get it just to stay right there. Then I'm gonna grab my drill and just fasten that there. I would keep your hand on for just one more screw so we don't lose our position, and go ahead and do the exact same thing. Okay, that strut is now relatively locked in place. Now what we can do is just go around and just get all these screws started. So that way you can just run around with the drill and just finish them off. So I just put this one up here. Let's get our bottom row figured out. 1 and 2. So that way now I can just just go around and just get all these wood screws fastened. And just, this is also good to make sure you don't miss any, because you definitely don't want to miss any of these wood screws. You want to make sure you get all of them in there. Okay, that piece is now installed. So we're going to move on to the second 24-inch panel. So go ahead and grab that. Let's go ahead and drop that into place. Use the mallet, make sure that it's the bottom of the strut there. And then go ahead and take your last 20-inch strut, get that fitted on there, drop that down into its home. Okay? I'm just gonna rotate this so I can grab, put that machine screw in. Okay. And then we're just going around with the wood screws and doing the same thing we've been doing. just wanna make sure those struts are nice and tight onto the panel. I like getting these screws ready to go so I can just run around with the drill. Again, I'm just, any way that you can push that strut into the panel is a good thing to be doing. Cool. Let's get these 3 on the bottom. Go ahead and grab your drill and just bam. And the last side over here. Now for the second to last piece to install, your final 20-inch panel with your handles. Gonna be almost identical procedure as the last time, only this time, you're gonna be dropping it into 2 already mounted struts. Don't worry, it'll fit right into its home. Just like that. Grab your mallet. Give it a few taps on either side, another few taps on the top. That piece is located. And you're just gonna go around and you're just gonna put those wood screws in, get that thing locked in. I'm just getting all, it looks like 8 of these screws. Just started with my hands. Got 3 on the sides, 2 on the bottom. I got these first ones set up. Let's go ahead and drill these in. Just taking a look at this gap before I drill it into its final spot. I'm happy with the way it looks as far as the strut and the panel. That. And we're gonna get this final side. Again, just taking a look. Gaps look great. If you did have a gap, you just use your mallet to try to tap in different areas. Sometimes you want to tap on the actual 3-way elbow. Sometimes you want to tap from the top. You just want to make sure you get that panel seated onto that strut. We're going to go ahead and get these last 3 screws here. Cool, you're almost done. So now you're gonna take that first part that we built in the very beginning, that hatch panel, and you're gonna go ahead and mount that on the top of this almost completed Exo Box. Just get it in the general spot. And then what you're gonna do, you're just gonna go around here and you're gonna tap these 3-way elbows. Now, see how far that went down? You don't want it to go quite that far down because this thing has to sort of drop in all at once. If it gets too far down, then another side won't go in. So just tap it and get it located, get it started just like that. That's perfect. And you're gonna do that all the way around. So all I'm doing is I'm hitting this 3-way elbow into the inside of the box, just like that. Bam, that one started too. Going around. Let's get this one started. That one's in. Now we got the final corner over here. Let's go ahead and tap that. Use your mallet. Okay, so this top is just about on. We've got all 4 of the 3-way elbows started into the 20-inch struts there. And now we're just gonna go around with the mallet and we're just gonna make sure this thing has a nice, snug relationship with the rest of the Exo Box. You're just gonna work your way around, getting all those corners nice and seated. Cool. That top is on there. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab some of your machine screws, 4 to be exact, and you can turn the box on its side very carefully. Again, this top is not fastened to the rest of the box right now, so I would not grab on these handles and pull on this thing. But what you're essentially doing right now is you're using the machine screws to just, again, finger tight and get that top attached to the box. So I'm actually going to just reach in and just by feel find that spot. So right here, here's your strut. It's just at the top of these ribs here. So you can feel with your finger these ribs, and then at the very top of that, you'll feel a little hole. That's the hole that machine screw is gonna go into. Once these 4 machine screws are in, then you're safe to pick up the box with the handles, still carefully. But the lid will not come free from the box at that point. Get all of these all fastened here. Again, I find the ribs there, and then I trace with my finger up a little bit, and there's your hole for the machine screw. And you just put that in and just get that finger tight. Last one. We've got the lid with the machine screws all finger tight. So now we've just got a few more screws to put in before we finish this Exo Box. So I'm gonna go ahead and rotate it down so that the hatch panel is facing out. So I can actually work on it. Now I'm gonna come around so you can see. All right, we're almost done with this box here. Right now, we've put the lid on the rest of the box. We've got the machine screws to make sure the lid doesn't actually come off of the box, but now we need to make sure that we put all the wood screws in along this seam up here, this seam here, this one here, and then the one behind me here. So you're gonna go ahead and grab your wood screws, and there's gonna be 3 on the bottom row, 2 on this row, 3 on this top row, and 2 on this row behind me here. While the box is in each one of these orientations, you're also gonna go around with the drill and make sure all of your machine screws are nice and tight at this point. Because remember before, all these machine screws that we've installed have all been finger tight, so we need to make sure we go around with the drill and get those nice and snug. So go ahead and grab your drill and your screws, and you're gonna go ahead and just start installing these wood screws onto this panel. Okay, so coming into the box here, this right here, these are one of the machine screws that you're gonna need to go around and tighten with the drill. So while the box is down here, you're gonna hit all 3 of these machine screws. Just like that. And you're gonna do that the same thing for all 3 of these. Right here is our wood screw on the side. Get that started with your hand, and then get the drill in there and finish that off. Okay, we just got a couple more on the bottom here to do. One more on the last side. And then now I'm gonna go around and just make sure all these machine screws on the bottom level here are nice and tight. Now you're gonna take this box and you're gonna rotate it 180 degrees this way. And you're gonna repeat that same process. So you're gonna get your wood screws. All your machine screws are already installed. It's just a matter of tightening them. Now I'm gonna go through on this entire bottom level here and just make sure all these machine screws are nice and tight. Okay. This box now has all of the internal hardware to be a complete Exo box. The final part of this box to install to make it a complete and finished RPM Exo box is going to be the hatch panel and the hatch screws. So go ahead and take your panel. I'm going to go ahead and just rotate this just for ease of installation, just like that. Then you're going to go ahead and take your panel, and you're going to fit that there on top just like so. And you're going to take your 4 flat head screws and just get those started by hand. And then you're going to take your handy dandy Allen wrench and finish those off. It's a 5mm Allen wrench. And it did come with your box. And there you have it. That is an RPM Exo box completely assembled, all the hardware. Good luck.